Well, hello, all you sports fans out there. I hope you have had, are having, or will have a tremendous day. My name is Derek Wilson, sitting here in beautiful British Columbia on Vancouver Island at St. Andrew's Presbyterian Church. We're going through yet another heat wave this summer, and it is awesome because I do so well in the heat and I don't sweat grossly and profusely all the time. That's a lie. And I hate sleeping and then like sweating in your sleep. I hate it. I can't stand it. Like when you wake up and your like bed's a little wet because you sweat while you sleep. I don't like it. I don't like it at all. So I'm not doing well. I've got an AC, portable AC, and a fan in my room, blasting on my face to keep me cool. Tim Miller, my co-host, is here from. Speaking of sweaty things, Tim Miller. Okay, Tim Miller, beautiful Tim
There's nothing
Miller
to do.
from London, England, Highgate,
There you
at
go.
Highgate Parish,
Yeah, I
Primrose.
know All Saints Parish and St. Augustine's Parish. You've
Yeah.
got two.
So
Yeah.
I can't remember. He's in control of so many things. He's almost like a superpower himself.
That's right. There's like me, the Archbishop, and the Queen. That's all
the
you need.
queen, the queen, right up here. Yeah, sweet. And we started doing this little podcast thing in the midst of the pandemic last year. We were both preaching and speaking in our churches and bouncing ideas off each other, and we decided, hey, let's make this a discussion, a conversation with our churches and anyone else, where two heads are better than one, but three heads are better than two, and four heads are better than two. So if you guys want to add a comment or have a question or anything like that, we promise to try to answer it to the best of our ability. But that's what it is. Like that's what the the community is. You ask questions, people give their opinions, and then hopefully together we can find truth and a way to live in this crazy, crazy world. So today, we just wrapped up Acts 20 last week. Today, we're going to start looking at Isaac. We covered Abraham. Um, we don't cover the main passages that everyone goes to. We cover kind of the subtle ones in the background that maybe no one, you haven't heard preached in a long time, or if ever. Um, it's just a helpful guide to get us into the Bible, learning a little bit more, asking some questions. So, Tim, do you want to start us out, or do you want to say anything, or start us out reading, or I'm going to give it to you.
No,
You decide
good
what you
good
want
to
to say.
be with you. And yeah, as Derek said, we're this is part of a conversation, and so if you're listening to the audio only side of this, you'll hear a couple of breaks in between when we read this passage, and just know that we will come back from that silence. But it's just a chance for us to kind of sit in the passage before we actually start our discussion. So, yes, shall I do the first reading then?
Yes.
Excellent. Here we go. So our reading today comes from Genesis chapter 25, verses 21 to 28. And Isaac prayed to the Lord for his wife, because she was barren. And the Lord granted his prayer, and Rebekah his wife conceived. The children struggled together within her, and she said, "If it is thus, why is this happening to me?" So she went to inquire of the Lord, and the Lord said to her, "Two nations are in your womb, and two peoples from within you shall be divided. The one shall be stronger than the other, the older shall serve the younger." When her days to give birth were completed, behold, there were twins in her womb. The first came out red, all his body like a hairy cloak, so they called his name Esau. After his brother came out with his hand holding Esau's heel, so his name was called Jacob. Isaac was 60 years old when she bore them. When the boys grew up, Esau was a skillful hunter, a man of the field, while Jacob was a quiet man, dwelling in tents. Isaac loved Esau because he ate of his game, but Rebekah loved Jacob.
And Isaac prayed to the Lord for his wife, because she was barren. And the Lord granted his prayer, and Rebekah his wife conceived. The children struggled together within her, and she said, "If it is thus, why is this happening to me?" So she went to inquire of the Lord, and the Lord said to her, "Two nations are in your womb, and two peoples from within you shall be divided. The one shall be stronger than the other, the older shall serve the younger." When her days to give birth were complete, behold, there were twins in her womb. The first came out red, all his body like a hairy cloak. So they called his name Esau. Afterward, his brother came out with his hand holding Esau's heel. So his name was called Jacob. Isaac was 60 years old when she bore them. When the boys grew up, Esau was a skillful hunter, a man of the field, while Jacob was a quiet man, dwelling in tents. Isaac loved Esau because he ate of his game, but Rebekah loved Jacob. Okay, Tim, anything that sticks out to you? Words,
Yeah, so
phrases?
yeah, there was two things struck me both times. Was the opening sentence, Isaac prayed to the Lord for his wife because she was barren, and the other one, Esau was a skillful hunter, a man of the field, while Jacob was a quiet man dwelling in tents. Both those sentences, yeah, stuck out to me. How about for yourself?
I keep getting stuck on. If it is thus, why is this happening to me? If it is thus, this isn't the King James version, so it seems really weird that it's in it. But I think I'm going to start talking like that. If it is thus, why is this happening? Um, that one, and then the two nations are in your womb, two people divided. When then you shall be divided, the one shall be stronger than the other. The older shall serve the younger. Okay, but I'm not going to get into it till we set that timer.
Well, so is there
Oh,
any kind of do you have like a thought or a question around those besides you just like to speak with a much more kind of Shakespearean emphasis on things or yeah
thou
thus
sayest thy was pondering thy questions of. I'm going to stop that. Um, the two nations are in the womb. Esau got the short end of the stick before he was even born. Like if that was called to him before he was even born, then him selling uh, his birthright and stuff we'll get into later, that all was either predetermined that God that's how it was going to go, or God knew it, and so He said this at the beginning. So I don't know. Maybe we get into free will, and that'll be the way this passage goes. How does free will work?
yeah yeah
So like even I don't know, like calling someone something before they were born,
Mm,
is that kind of like prophesying that over them? Is that
mm,
pigeonholing them?
mm,
Even if it's like it's great for Jacob, but Esau is getting the short end of the stick here.
Mm, mm,
Mm.
mm.
So yeah.
Yeah.
How about you?
Yeah, I think what I find interesting um, about the two ones that so the first one, what's interesting to me is that it's Isaac who's praying to God for the barren woman, whereas in my memory, more of the passages in Scripture is the woman crying out to God when they're barren,
Mm.
um, which I think there seems to be a very different emphasis on on Isaac and his I guess his relationships with women particularly that might be different to other women in the Bible or other couples and yeah
Mm.
in the Bible. And then the second one too, just such an interesting play with Esau, this man of the field, and Jacob, a dweller of tents. Um, and obviously they're just like pre-COVID, post-COVID kind of situations for us and that. So but yeah, all right, shall I start the timer
Sure.
before we go rogue?
With you talking about the hunter and the sitting in tents, my
Mm,
first thought was, God seems to really love the contemplative person, like the sitting down and thinking and not going out and hunting. But then I was reminded about David's men, like all the mighty men when they were talking about him, and like he killed 300 guys in one battle, and these guys could shoot bows, and even
mm,
David was a warrior and stuff,
mm,
and maybe the contemplative thinker person is can be the leader, but he needs those, out there hunting, fighting, like
mm.
the, I don't know if you want to say it, manly man. And those listening on podcasts, I've got the air quotes up, man to support them, kind
Yeah,
of
yeah.
thing, right? Like I wonder if to
Mm,
be a great leader, you've got to kind of have that thinking and working through
mm,
stuff and philosopher mind, I guess. But then that only takes you so far. You need the muscle behind you to do anything.
mm. Yeah, yeah.
Maybe that's
I
a
no, yeah.
vision
I
of
heard a
leadership.
quote or I saw a quote online attributed to Meister Eckhart, which said, if I'm remembering it correctly, it said what the seeds you sow in contemplation are the um, or what you will reap in action, kind of thing. Like
Oh yeah.
I'm butchering the quote, and somebody out there's screaming into their screen because they know exactly what I'm talking about. I'll try to look it up and share it. But the idea was that, as you say, is like either option only gets you so far. If you're so busy constantly just acting or reacting to what's happening, without taking that contemplative, reflective step back that allows you to reset, then you're kind of constantly, a victim of momentum. But at the same time, too, if all you ever do is kind of sit down and think about things, and nothing ever becomes kind of action and tangible, then it's like I can think about my hunger and think about how easy it would be to make a sandwich to satisfy the hunger, but I can't satisfy the hunger thinking about the sandwich that I don't make. I need to make the sandwich and eat. We'll see. I love a good sandwich, right? Love a good sandwich, but
Man
but
does not
the,
live on bread alone, Tim.
that's why you add the meat and the cheese and
Jeez.
the mayo. You know. um,
Yeah. Well, I think
yeah,
that.
like
Sorry,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
I was just saying, like I think, like for me, it's this passage is so interesting because of as you say, which I think is worth getting into, is like that sense of what how do we understand prophecy here, which is very different than oftentimes what the prophets of the Old Testament are doing. And that sense of what's predetermined, what's being kind of spoken into existence that may not be there, are things unable to kind of exist in an actual space of free will, depending on how you understand the knowledge and power of God. But also too, like what we have here, I think, which I find really interesting in this passage is the amount of different personalities that make up this family, and all the different ways, not only that they're reacting and acting in the world, but also how they, the dynamics of the family together. You've got a father who it said, he loves his elder son because he's that kind of quote unquote manly man. And you've got the mother who loves this younger son. Does she love him just because of the prophecy? And so she's like hedging her bets. It's like, if the older is going to serve the younger is going to be my baby. Or is there actually something about like the way their personalities just kind of, kind of gel together and things like that. So yeah.
I wonder what that prophecy about the two nations will be at war. Like if Esau realized that, I'm more suited as the secondary role. Like I'll go out, I'll provide, I'll hunt, but I'm not the number one kind of guy. Like I'm more suited here. And Jacob realizing he's number one, but being grateful at it, like it wasn't his birthright, like he stole it and he tricked him, and it was a gift that he is at that spot and he was more gracious with it. Would those two nations actually still be a battle? Like, is it an idea of being something you're not, like not realizing who you are, but the idea of I want what that other person has? And then that's where the conflict comes out of. Like if they would have just grown up in their, not, I don't say roles because that has a lot of negative talk about it. Like you got to fit in your role, you can't step out of the role. I'm not talking about that because I'm wrong, but people are individuals are set up. Some people are really great at being a serve. Like I want to serve, I want to help, I see your vision, how can I help you fulfill your vision? And then the visionaries need those other ones because they're too busy thinking to actually go through and do what they want to do, right? And they work really well together. I've seen it. They work really well together. But if the supporting person says, I want to do the vision, and the vision guy says, I want to do all the work, then it sometimes can clash heads and divide.
Yeah, I think, I guess that's the, one of the difficulties of, of just human existence, I guess, is navigating the spaces where we actually recognize that the world is not a competition or a war. Like there's this, I can't remember where it was that I first kind of, it was probably in a philosophy class somewhere or something, but it was like, it's just that general concept of like, do you believe that, all the good in the world or all the love in the world, for example, is like a single pie. And so if somebody gets a slice of that pie, then that automatically means that you can never have a full pie. And I remember thinking to myself, well, that's just stupid. And then I looked at my life and I was like, oh, except like that's literally how I react, like how I act. I act as if everything is completely finite, and once something is given, it cannot be given somewhere else. And yet, there's a phrase in one of Zaria's books that says something about like kindness isn't exhausted, but it multiplies when you give it away. Yeah. And I, and it's just like, gosh, I actually wish I would have grown up thinking that a bit more, and believing it. And I think that's the crazy thing too, is like in our churches as well.
Yeah.
And in our theology, we see the infinite person of God and believe that the love of God is somehow finite and cannot actually be as all encompassing and as freely given and as poured out in its entirety unconditionally for all people of all places, all time. And so we fight over it, like, yeah, as you say, that kind of, and then start to, in that fight, then start to see it's like, well, this person obviously has more value to the community because they're doing X. So I need to do X if I'm going to be valuable to the community. And and I think the worst part about the whole situation, as you said about like this thing with Jacob and Esau, is like, are we just perpetuating the means by which we set people up for failure? By which we kind of give them the parameters and say, you need to fit this or you're failing. And you also, if you do fit this and that's success, you also might be failing in comparison to somebody else who's better than you, because their role is just by its very nature better than your role.
Yeah, so like, what is biblical leadership? Well, that's maybe another topic, but biblical leadership. I listened to a podcast and they were talking about biblical leadership and how it didn't work. But also, or how we don't do it now, it's without really leaders. But they're also talking about, when we were talking about this desire to have what other people have, they were saying that in Genesis, that one verse, the woman will desire her husband. We've always taken it as, she will love her husband and stuff, but it's actually, she will desire his role. Like, she will want what he has. And so there's a conflict between even marriage, desire to have, to be in control, to have that number one position over it. And that's in a world where there are number one positions and there's number two and number three, then you're always going to have that conflict, right? Instead of everyone even across.
Well, the Olympics would be very boring if everyone got a participation medal and there was no gold, silver, and bronze, right? Like, so there's that place where, like, competition and to push each other to achieve and do different things actually is kind of healthy. But it's that kind of, when it becomes like your life's value and your life's purpose and meaning, that again, then it, as you say, it becomes that kind of, that sense of like the desire for, somebody else's place, somebody else's position, that really just drives us to do stupid things.
Yeah. I don't know how you would avoid that with a system with A and B people in it. Like, it's just natural to, if you have different tiers of people, to want what another tier has and make it your own.
I think what happens is, like, I don't know. Yeah, somebody
Maybe
else.
We're getting off track.
No, but I just like, I think what's interesting too, because like for me, this passage reads as somebody looking back over the life of Isaac and Rebecca and their children, and reading something into it, not in like a negative way, but like reading back into the story and understanding of what God was doing in the midst of it, because the story doesn't turn out the way it should. And I just think, like, does it sometimes actually take, that step back, or being at the other end of it, and that hard work of time to be able to look back and see where the meaning and the matter is, to look back and see where kind of God was at work, and how, in the end, the story doesn't turn out the way we might imagine it. or how we might have thought was going to be the best outcome. But actually, what we learn about relationships, what we learn about the covenant love of God, what we learn about how we all inhabit and embody ourselves in the world in different ways. It takes the long view and that the hard work to actually get to that point where we can see that with that kind of maturity and objectivity. And I think our world, we become quite lazy. Like, there's so many things that kind of start there. There's a lot of hard work, trying to get to know children, right? Like, you get a group of kids together. It's like, oh, let's find out about them. Let's, what kind of things do they like? What kind of things do they not? And then, but by the time they get through school, the school system is set up in a way that doesn't give teachers, primarily doesn't give teachers a chance to actually get to know their students, to invest in them, to be able to encourage each of them individually. And instead is like a very kind of, set structure, and certain children with personalities and skills will kind of just find their way through it. And other ones will really struggle. And they can come out of school thinking, these are the smart kids, these are the dumb kids. Mm-hmm. But then you put them in a completely different context of, whether like skills-based work, for example, or trades. And, not everyone understands how plumbing works. I know Derek does, because, he's done the hard work. But like, yeah, and I guess it's that comparison again about, the man of the field and the man of the tent. Well, they both bring different things to the table, and it takes that long and hard work and recognizing, the value of kind of community and human experience that needs for it not to just kind of hit that really quick and easy. It's like, is there meaning and value in this job? Well, then that's what we focus on. Or yeah.
It's like that cartoon where there's that elephant, a monkey, a giraffe, and a sheep. And it's like, today's test will be how well you can climb that tree. And it's like, well, none of them but the monkey are going to be able to do it. But if you had different tests, work right.
Yeah.
I agree. What else in that passage do you want to hit on?
I just like, well, one of the things, like, I was, when we were first kind of talking about this, I just kind of opened the Bible, and it seemed to start very nicely in verse 21. Isaac, because it leads into Isaac and Rebecca and the twins and everything like that. But that this kind of whole opening sentence, I find really fascinating. As I was saying before, in that sense, like, Isaac obviously loved Rebecca, to the point that he actually was the one who was interceding for her in something that made her infertility was a mark against her, not against him. And what's interesting, obviously, in like the story of Abraham and Sarah, is that then they bring in the concubine to try to fill that gap. And there's obviously other stories where, the men have multiple wives or, concubines or whatever. And so there's always this kind of competitiveness with the women against each other about who's going to be, the most fertile and everything like that. But here there's like this really, yeah, exactly. And actually we'll come into this in the next couple of months when we actually look at Jacob as well. But it's like there's this really, I don't know, very kind of like touching moment where, and I guess maybe for me as I talk about it, it resonates with some of the roads that Megan and I walked through with infertility before through the great miracle of IVF. Zaria was kind of conceived and born, and there's like this really, it's a really kind of touching, simple story in that sense of, when you love somebody, that kind of, that yearning of your heart is to see them, when you recognize the barrenness, which might be sometimes, barren of womb, but there's other ways we can be barren in life. But it's like, who are the people around us that we recognize that there's a barrenness in them, and are we willing to be the people who intercede for them? Not simply because they've asked us, oh, here's my prayer request for the week, but actually recognizing that, maybe that's, part of that prophecy is like, where's the hope and promise of new life in that barren place of their life? And are we going to be people who step into the gap and intercede and pray for that, believing that God can do that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm a bit tired, so my mind isn't as quick as it normally is. It's only a
Yeah,
little bit.
we switched roles this week, and Derek is awake early, and I'm not.
But not even
It's
that early. Like I shouldn't be this tired, but I am. But yeah,
been a long. We've hit. We're like at 20 minutes. So if you got, feel free to throw in the last couple of grenades as we often do, but don't feel the pressure to either, Derek.
I'm gonna follow that Bible verse, and it's like, don't go mumbling when you pray and yell really loud so people hear you. I'll keep it nice and short, biblical styles. But yeah, yeah. I never thought about the Isaac, like praying that prayer and how different it was from everyone else. Like that, with the other things, it was kind of like not waiting for God, right? Like God promises, like Abraham and Sarah, God promised they would have it, but it's like, well, it's getting kind of long time. It's got to happen soon. But Isaac was willing to wait, and she was 60 when, or he was 60. She was, I don't know how old when they gave birth, but it was a while. Like you're getting into dangerous territory there. But yeah, still willing to be faithful and wait.
And maybe that's part of it too, is like, maybe even just that kind of simple thing is that as Christians, are we willing to be the unexpected people praying for somebody else? Because this passage would have made more sense in that kind of overarching biblical narrative, as you say, kind of the, God promises, the wife's barren, the wife cries out because of, she feels that barrenness.
Yeah.
But, maybe what we just need to be is, the unexpected people who pray.
Yeah. Unexpected prayer. Lord, thank you for this time together. And we thank you. We can come. I trust and pray that you would show us our own visions and dreams, and show us ways that we can support other people's visions and dreams, that it wouldn't be a conflict of who's more powerful or who's leading the way, but is the kingdom being expanded? What's our end goal, and how do I help do that? And when it doesn't happen like we think it would happen, help us to be the unexpected people that pray. Amen.
Amen. And keep us cool, good Lord. Keep us cool.
Yes. Yes. All right. We'll see you all next week.
Excellent. Take care.